going to turn it over to Rob, and he is going to address the topic of cyber insurance.
Hi, everybody. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Erica, and thank you to NPW for the opportunity to talk to you guys about different types of risk management. So we're going to talk about cyber insurance briefly here, but you can proceed to the next slide. And so cyber risk is something that is a really just a situation that we have today with everyone as we rely more and more on technology. And so technology is a two-edged sword, I guess, in the sense that on the one hand, it gives us the ability to do a lot more with less, and gives us all sorts of great capabilities. We rely on our phones and computers to do all kinds of things. But on the other side, that opens us up to all sorts of new risks that are sometimes invisible, and stuff that we really don't want to have to think about while we're trying to do our work in the nonprofit world. And so in this portion of the presentation, we're just going to be talking about three kind of broad topics. Starting from the left here, what cyber exposures do nonprofits have? What can the organizations do to reduce their cyber risk? And then what tools can insurers provide beyond just simple insurance to help nonprofits reduce not only their risk, but also their costs? Go to the next slide. So in this slide, we're just starting off with the types of data that nonprofit organizations may have that could be at risk in the event of something, some sort of a cyber attack, like a cyber breach or a ransomware attack, or some other type of attack where a threat actor gains access to the organization's information. And there are three buckets for types of information. Basically, these are your personally identifiable information, protected health information, and then payment card industry data. And in New York, there is a law called the SHIELD Act. It's an acronym. It stands for Stop Hacks and Improve Electronic Data Security. And that law applies to all organizations who maintain any data that is considered private, and that would basically include all of the above. And so in the event that an organization is breached and that data is compromised, essentially organizations have 30 days to report the data breach, and organizations must notify any resident who's a New York resident whose private information was reasonably believed to have been compromised. And there are all sorts of other details around this law regarding specific thresholds and the types of data and which organizations need to be notified and timelines and things like that. But basically, personally identifiable information and health data and payment card information would fall into that, fall within that purview. And so it's important to also just consider that even though a nonprofit organization may use a third party to store this information, so like say they are not holding the information in their private servers or in a local environment, they may still be held liable if that data is breached, even by a third party in a third party breach. So the liability may rest with the organization for failing to do proper due diligence with respect to the protection of that data. And data can be anything that you collect in the process of hiring, interviewing board members, soliciting donations, managing any employee benefit programs, or collecting any data related to any individuals, either internally or externally. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So expanding on the types of exposures that nonprofits have. This is just a sort of a list here, but the first item really just it's a question about, does your nonprofit have the resources to effectively manage a crisis? And the cost of crisis management is just not only financial in terms of the resources that would be cost to hire somebody to help in the event of a sort of a damage control situation, but also in terms of hours of operational terms and just human resources and time commitment by the people that have other jobs to do, and they don't, they're not really, their job is not to manage a crisis. And so that can range from notifying a state agency of the fact that there was a data breach to just doing damage control with PR if the organization's reputation is at risk. And your reputation can be harmed in a cyber incident, or such as a data breach or a ransomware attack, but it can also happen as a function of the data breach itself. So, like, there are types of hacks that happen now where threat actors will create fake web pages for companies or organizations and then collect data such as usernames and passwords or other information through these fake web pages. And that could be considered an erosion of the brand or an erosion of the name of the organization, and that could cause problems downstream. Um, and then so that's crisis management and reputation harm. The next four bullets: funds transfer liability, social engineering, invoice manipulation, and impersonation, are all tied together through different types of psychological manipulation. And threat actors today rely heavily on psychological manipulation to conduct attacks. And the most common form of cyber attack today is through what's called a social engineering attack, where you are on the receiving end of an email that looks like it came from, Best Buy or Costco or Apple or Microsoft, but it's really coming from somebody else, and they use those emails to trick you into doing things that you wouldn't otherwise do, such as enter your credentials on the wrong website or send funds to somebody who isn't who they claim to be. And if a member mistakenly transfers funds to a threat actor, that's where you would be happy that you had cyber liability insurance to take, to pay for that funds transfer fraud issue. Um, Also, threat actors will use those tools and tricks to gain access to internal systems and networks, and then manipulate internal documents or impersonate employees, and or they can install what's called ransomware software to essentially encrypt your internal computer networks and then hold you hostage and lock up your computers and your data and hold them for ransom unless a ransom is paid by the nonprofit organization. And these are all just types of examples of the exposures that are out there that unfortunately we all have to deal with. And it can always result in what we refer to as business interruption. So it just could cause the nonprofit to not be able to do its day-to-day work and cause it to lose income or revenue as a result of that. You can move to the next slide. So we have a poll here that you can answer, and it basically just asks, how confident are you in your nonprofit's current cybersecurity situation? Are you very confident, somewhat confident, not sure? So you can answer that question, and then we'll move on to the next slide. There you go. So Next question that's important to ask is what can nonprofits today do to reduce their cyber risks? And these are going to be five things that nonprofits can do to reduce their cyber risks. The first thing is multi-factor authentication. And multi-factor authentication is more important than ever today because of the fact that there are so many password breaches that happen. I mean, we all have all received emails notifying us that we were included in a cyber breach. Um, Sometimes hundreds of millions of people at once are caught in cyber breaches. And so when you're logging into an important account, like your internal network or your bank, you want to have multi-factor authentication set up. But there are different types of multi-factor authentication that are, have different levels of usefulness. And they're broken down into three buckets, which is number one is what you know, number two is what you have, and number three is who you are. What you know is kind of the lowest level of multi-factor authentication. So if you use your username and password, an organization or an account might ask you also to enter your PIN, your login PIN. And that's a type of what you know multi-factor authentication, like a two-factor authentication. But that what you know login PIN can be captured in a data breach, or it could be guessed by an attacker. If you use like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then people are going to be able to figure that out, or they're going to be able to guess that and use that data against you. And so it's more recommended to go further than what you know by using what you have or who you are. What you have, an example of that might be your cell phone, or if you're an Apple ecosystem user using what they call a quote unquote trusted device. So it might be an Apple Watch or your Mac or your iPad to subsequently verify the authentication of who you are by using that mobile device. Or you can use an app on your mobile device, like a Google Authenticator or Authy, that will collect a one-time passcode and then display it for you that you can prove that you have your device. Or you could just be receiving text messages to your phone from your bank or from whichever account you're using. And those text messages, you'll be able to send, notification back that you have that text message. But the problem with, and that just real quick aside here is one of the biggest challenges that people are facing now, one of the scariest types of hacks is something called a SIM swap. A SIM swap is where you have your SIM card on your cell phone, and that SIM card knows who you are. It identifies you as the owner of your telephone number and everything else. And a SIM swap is one of the most shocking types of attacks that people can be on the receiving end of. Basically, by basically a hacker will call up your cell phone company and pretend to be you and say that they lost their phone and they lost their SIM card and they got a new SIM card and they need to have your phone number transferred over to them. And unless you've told your cell phone carrier to not allow SIM swaps or not allow people to log in and identify themselves as you without like multi-factor authentication, you could lose your cell phone number. And this is happening more and more. It's escalating every year with a number of attacks that happen this way. And it's very, very frightening because think about all the information you have on your phone. It's like basically you in your pocket. So that's just an important thing to remember. And then, so the final thing in terms of, identifying who you are in terms of authentication is biometric data. So that would be facial recognition software, your fingerprint or voice recognition. However, even this today is becoming more and more easy for people to fake because of artificial intelligence. I mean, you can go online to a company like 11 Labs and make a copy of somebody's voice in about 5 minutes. So, this is important to know about multi-factor authentication. Number two is encryption of backups. If you're storing and creating backups, you want to make sure they're encrypted because obviously the backup itself is going to be everything about all your data. And if that was encrypted, then it won't be readable by anybody who's able to get access to it unless they have the encryption key, which they probably won't have. So that's really important. And then number three, VPNs or a virtual private network is a tool that you can use to communicate with your nonprofit organization through what they call an encrypted tunnel. And it's a virtual setup where the VPN connects you with an IP address to your organization, allows you to communicate through that organization, and nobody can see the communication that happens between you and your organization. And it's important to use a VPN in places like public Wi-Fi areas, like a Starbucks or an airport, or any place that's a public area where you see when you're logging on to that Wi-Fi network that it says unprotected network. It'll probably throw up like a little warning sign. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So another thing to do is to use what they call high password entropy. And entropy is just a term for a measure of randomness, or how difficult it would be for an attacker to guess your password. Attackers have all sorts of free tools available to guess passwords. And depending on the simplicity or complexity of your password, passwords can be guessed in a varying range of times. And the best practices for passwords are to, generate all your passwords using high entropy, make all your passwords unique, and then don't rely solely on the passwords, but use 2FA. Just for an example, in the two examples shown above there, if you use a password with 5 characters with only uppercase and lowercase letters and numbers, it can be cracked instantly with free software on the internet. If you use a 10-character password with numbers and upper and lowercase letter, it would take 5 years. And just as another example, if you use a password with 15 characters, upper and lowercase letters and numbers, it would take 600 million years to crack with technology available today. At the end of the presentation, we have a table that shows the strength of entropy of various passwords with numbers, uppercase, lowercase letters, data, special characters, etc. And then the final thing here is to expose yourself to education and awareness about phishing emails and how to recognize them. The more you're exposed to phishing attacks that are simulated, the more equipped you're going to be at identifying and not being fooled by phishing emails. And again, attackers use social engineering and prey on our psychology to get us to act without thinking. And they want to use urgency and seriousness, such as sending you like a time-sensitive email or something coming from your a very senior level boss who's insisting that you do something to get you to do something without thinking. And the more times you're exposed to how to identify a phishing email, less likely you are to be caught by it. You can go to the next slide. So the last slide here is just talking about other tools in addition to insurance that cyber liability providers can offer. And cyber liability insurance is basically there, like Erica said, to transfer the risk from the nonprofit organization to an insurance carrier. And those policies are there to protect you from the types of things that we covered, like ransomware attacks, like data breaches, like having to deal with public relations fallout, notification of individuals, and first or third party breaches. But other types of services that insurers can provide include what's called active cyber insurance, which would be basically continuous monitoring of your digital presence, including the organization's URL, your email addresses, your communication ports through which you communicate, and then provide real-time alerts to the organization in the event of some sort of a threat. And then rapid response time, which would basically be an on-call expert who's somebody who's there in the event that something happens. And the types of rapid response, or the types of responses, I should say, are pretty significant in terms of what can be offered in the event of an attack. So, just to comment on ransomware, usually ransomware is a sub-limited amount of a primary limits policy. So if you have $1 million cyber liability policy, you might have a sub-limit for ransomware or funds transfer fraud of, say, $250,000. And if you work with a good cyber liability company, that organization will actually go above and beyond paying the funds transfer fraud, but then they will also go and work to claw back the loss of funds by partnering with the FBI and incident response teams to claw back those funds. And so that can basically be in the process of making you whole, regardless of the amount of the funds transfer fraud. On-demand support. This is expertise from an in-house team of cybersecurity experts in the event that you have questions about it. Security awareness training. That's as mentioned before, in terms of just being aware of phishing emails and becoming training you and your organization to make sure that you can recognize them and protect the organization. And this is usually included as an additional, offered as an additional fee, these types of training simulations to help them better prepare for the asymmetric nature of cyber attacks today. But it's very useful. Personalized alerts, which can, again, notify you in the event that there's a situation before it escalates to something really bad. And then also email, having managed email security that can help the organization monitor and block threats to email and prevent account takeovers and safeguard important communications and data. So that's it for me. And let me know if you have any questions, but I'll let Erica take it from here.
Thanks, Rob. I just wanted to briefly ask Amy if you had adequate.
Hold on, Erica. I'm not sure we can hear you well.
Now, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to know, Amy, if you had a sense of what the responses to the poll question were.
Yes, let me put them. I'm sharing results now. Can people see them on their screen?
Okay, so it looks like about half the people were somewhat confident, and hopefully for those of us, and 28% were very confident, but hopefully Rob's presentation gave you some ideas to help you get to the point where more of you will be very confident. Okay, thank you, Amy.
Problem.
All right, so I am going to talk a little bit about management liability coverage. So why do nonprofits need management liability? Well, there are different coverages included within the topic of management liability. Directors and officers liability protects board members for decisions they make and actions they take in good faith in their running of the organization. And it's important to have D&O insurance because board members, particularly those who are very active in business or organizations, they are aware that they could be liable if something goes wrong, and they could be brought into a lawsuit. And so they're going to want to know that you have directors and officers insurance. So that's how you're going to attract and retain good board members. Another coverage, and the one that we're actually going to focus on today, is employment practices liability. So this includes all different types of discrimination. And the thing about these claims is that they can cost you your reputation. If there is something that happens and it gets into the media, which things do tend to do, if it destroys your reputation, it doesn't matter how much insurance you have. Your reputation your integrity as it's perceived by your public, by your stakeholders, is priceless. So that is something that where risk management prevention tools can often be even more valuable, if not as valuable, as the insurance coverage. And then other areas in this type of insurance are protection from various types of theft, whether it is assets in the form of funds or actually assets in the form of tangible items. So you can see that management liability can be an important coverage for a nonprofit to have. So this gives you a little bit of an explanation about what the different coverages are. So we already mentioned directors and officers liability. Employment practices goes beyond discrimination to all kinds of employment-based torts. So harassing someone on the job or allowing them to be harassed, taking retaliation against someone who complains, wrongful termination, wrongful failure to promote. There's a myriad of different causes of action here. And it can be based on a number of different categories, depending on where in the country you're located. These are just a few of the categories that discrimination or alleged discrimination can be based on. And then in terms of protecting assets, we have fiduciary liability. So in many circumstances, we become fiduciaries. So the board of directors is a fiduciary of the organization's funds. And the organization is a fiduciary of any funds that you are holding on behalf of your employees. So it could be a pension plan, a 401k, flexible spending accounts. And similarly to what Rob mentioned in his segment, just because you bring in a third party to handle this for you, maybe your 401k plan is handled by Charles Schwab or by E-Trade or what have you, that doesn't mean that the nonprofit organization has no liability. And other coverages include crime. You can even get kidnap and ransom if you have staff members traveling to different parts of the globe where that could be a concern. And there can also be funds to help your organization deal with an incident of workplace violence. We're going to focus on employment practices because that's where we have the most claims. And so here is the next poll question about how your organization may have dealt with employment-related claims. So if everybody could jump on and answer that. And Amy, you can let us know whenever it's okay for Elijah to move on to the next slide.
Sure. Can you all see the real-time poll responses, Erica?
No.
Okay, so let's end the poll now, and then I'm going to share the results with everyone. How about now?
Okay. So interesting, pretty evenly spaced out between you have experienced it and taken proactive responses. You experienced it, but the insurance company handled it. You didn't make any proactive changes, or you haven't experienced them, but it is a concern and you're trying to take steps so that it won't happen in the future. So that's great. You're in the right place. And we'll go on and talk about some of those tools that your insurance company can help you with. Okay, so if you look at where nonprofits encounter these employment-related risks, there's a lot of different areas. So hiring processes, we maybe don't tend to think because, oh, well, we haven't hired this person yet, or they're not working with us. But when you are trying to hire in today's digitalized workplace, you sometimes get pressured to make decisions quickly. The younger applicants often expect to be contacted immediately, to get responses very quickly, to be given feedback very quickly. And so you don't want to let that urgency that the digital environment can create rush you too much so that you make mistakes. Performance and performance management seems like maybe a more traditional area where people would think that if a person is not performing well or is receiving a performance review that is below their expectations, or it just may come out in conversation that they feel that they're not getting equitable treatment. Supervisors, people tend to get promoted. They're doing great in their job, and so they make you a supervisor of other people doing that. Supervision and management requires a different skill set, and not equipping your staff with that can create a lot of risks for employment-related claims. And then mental health. This is a big focus nowadays, post-pandemic, and stress and things like a hostile work environment that puts people under stress and impacts their mental health need to be real concerns and can't just be brushed aside as being, woo-woo or something like that. We also see this in our attempts at DEI in working towards having equity in our workplaces. This really helps to create an atmosphere where there may be fewer employment problems because you have a diverse and a well-diversified workplace. And when that's a known value, people tend to be more mindful about how they approach people who may be different from them in one way or another. We do have multi-generational teams now, so people come to the job with different expectations, different ways of communicating, and that can definitely lead to more chances for conflict than if everybody kind of has the same mindset, the same work ethic, the same way of communicating. Hybrid work can also exacerbate some of the tensions or points of conflict because it can be much harder to manage people or to understand intent with digital communication. You're not really, even when you're doing it via Zoom, you're not really picking up as well as you could in person, or you don't have the opportunity on people's nonverbal cues, on body language. And then, of course, separation. If you have to separate from an employee, that is often the point at which the allegation of discriminatory treatment or another employment-related tort comes up. and where the beginning of having to report a situation to your insurance company starts as you terminate someone, and then a week later you may be notified that they filed a complaint with the EEOC, or that you may receive an attorney's letter. So how can the insurance companies provide you with the tools that will help you avoid some of these potential tension points or lessen the impact? So the first thing is they will provide you with loss prevention guidelines. And these can be from bullet points up to manuals that will outline what are the key issues that you may encounter and give you proactive plans that you can implement to avoid having employment lawsuits arise out of those incidents. Most employment practices liability policy companies, the companies providing the policies, will provide some degree of access to a hotline from a couple of hours to significantly more, and it usually involves employment law lawyers. They will provide you with sample employment policies, and it can be as much as a complete state-specific employee handbook that a nonprofit can adopt and just customize in a few places to make it their own. And this is really good for small startup nonprofits that don't have a lot of HR resources in-house. And then finally, you will get access to a myriad of online training. And so you can implement this as part of your onboarding process for ongoing training. It can help you comply with rules and regulations that require you to do training. So there are a number of areas where you can get tools at no additional cost or at an extremely discounted cost from your insurance company. I'm going to now turn it over to Kevin to talk about workers' compensation.
Thank you, Erica. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Cool. Thank you for MPW, Jan, Amy, and the rest of the team for setting these series up. I hope everyone that's been attending them has found them insightful. My name is Kevin Allyn. I am a vice president on the property and casualty side of the business. I've been with Brown & Brown for the past 7 years, working with nonprofits to reduce risk. And I do not have a mustache anymore, so I think it's time for a new photo. We're talking today. We're going to talk about workers' compensation insurance, which is the most comprehensive combination of coverages ever manuscripted. And before we get into why workers' compensation matters to nonprofits, I want to talk about what workers' compensation actually covers for. So if you can go to the next slide first. Great, thank you. So this is a mandatory fixed commodity, which holds 4 separate policies within the statute. Firstly, you have your Schedule A benefits, which provide claimants with a death, a medical, and a disability policy, which we call indemnity. And then secondly, you have your Schedule B, which provide employers with an additional liability policy, which protects employers against third-party suits should the employer be deemed willfully negligent for the employee's job-related accident. So switching gears here back to why workers' comp matters. Tight budgets make nonprofits vulnerable to financial shocks, which are impacting program sustainability and long-term planning. Workers' comp is more than insurance. It's a safety management tool. It's a proactive safety management tool that helps prevent injuries, mitigate risk, and promote a culture of workplace safety. And then lastly, cost control is best achieved through prevention, not premium shopping. The best insurance strategy isn't necessarily finding the cheapest policy. It's reducing risk through prevention. Fewer claims means lower cost, better coverage options, and a safer work environment overall. So we're just going to stop here quickly for the poll. It's asking which best describes your understanding of your nonprofit safety program and its impact on workers' compensation costs. So I'll give everyone a minute here to fill that out. Amy, am I able to see the results as well?
Yeah, I'm waiting for it to get to at least a few more. There's a few stragglers coming now, so I will show the results momentarily. I think we're good here. So I'm going to end the poll now, and I'm going to share the results with everybody. Can you see?
Yes. Okay, so it looks like about half of you have a basic knowledge of it. 14% could do a better job, and then 36% are actively know what they're doing and understanding. So that's good, and I hope we can add some more value as we continue to go on here. Next slide, please. So continuing with the best practices for risk management, it is essential that employers build a culture of safety. And in order to do that, you need buy-in from top to all the way down to the organization. So management commitment is essential for that. You should promote early injury reporting and engagement to lead to better claim management and a reporting process. And lastly, safety must be a shared responsibility so that the workplace safety thrives when the workplace safety thrives when everyone takes ownership about it. Next slide, please. Another essential risk management tool is developing and maintaining a return to work program or a modified duty program. So what this does, it keeps injured employees engaged and lowers total claim costs, and also supports employee morale and productivity. We have actually a sample of these type of programs that we implement into our nonprofit insurance, and you guys will be able to have a copy of that to help better understand and what those actual programs entail. We also have created a checklist to help organizations, especially nonprofit organizations, stay on top of the claims management process. So this just makes sure that everything is going smoothly, whether it be completing and filing the injury report itself, conducting the injury investigation, notifying payroll and claims adjusters, making sure that you're in contact with them, updating and recording the OSHA log, reviewing loss runs and managing open cases, and then making sure you're reaching out to that injured employee, making sure you're checking in with them, and just worried about their well-being. So all incidents matter, especially large or small when it comes to workers' compensation. For every serious injury, there are many minor ones, and the minor ones usually add up. So frequency predicts severity, and in the insurance world, frequency is the amount of claims, and severity is the number of those claims, and that's how workers' compensation is measured. It's important to investigate all accidents because this can help spot trends. So if you have multiple accidents with the same trend, you can create proactive safety measures to avoid future claims. So that's just looking at those types of claims and making sure that they might be similar or different. And then lastly, 89% of incidents may be overlooked if only OSHA recordables or analyzed. So you just want to make sure that you're looking at a holistic measure internally and externally. And then just tying everything back together here to end it, lowering your claim frequency will equal lower premium. So it's not necessarily about changing carriers every year. It's actually looking at your claim history, building these safety programs to lower that overall claim frequency, being in compliance with OSHA to reduce exposures or fines, training builds safer, more competent workforce. So training your employees, actively being involved with them. And then lastly, safety boost morale, and staff retention. And then just one thing to note, I saw a quote out there and I just wanted to include it. It says, companies who make the greatest strides do so because everyone is focused on the importance of safety. So I just wanted to end with that. And I hope that was insightful for you all and you guys have some questions for us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Erica, Rob, and Kevin. Now, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to add it to the chat. Give everyone, or if you feel confident to kind of come off of Cora.
Can I ask a question? Erica, when I think you were talking about theft, and one of the things you didn't mention, I don't know if this comes into it at all, is if someone works for you and they develop a program or they write something or they, have a piece of work that then they take somewhere else. I don't know where that falls, but it's a concern that I think I've heard people talk about. Is that something that, yeah?
So first thing that you need to do is you need to look at their employment contract, because generally speaking, any work product that an employee creates or produces in the course of their employment becomes the property of their employer. So you want to make sure that there isn't anything in an employment contract, or if they're an independent contractor in this specific work order part of their contract, where they have the right to take that work product with them. So this is not something, this is a business risk. And then you need to consider, how are you going to enforce your rights and try to have them be punished for breaching your rights. And that's going to be a matter for you to retain an attorney and consider different ways to go after them. So when we cover potential theft, we're normally covering either theft of actual funds or tangible items. And theft of that type of non-tangible business asset is generally not included in an insurance policy.
Thanks.
I think Edgardo has his hand up. If you wanted to.
I just wanted to respond to what Cora was bringing up, which is what we would refer to as intellectual property. And I think that Erica brings up a very good point about the employment contract. And then the question comes to, well, what kind of employee do you have? And if the person's not on a contract and they're on a payroll, the way that because we do social and emotional training in schools, and we train teachers, and so the trainers that go into the schools, they sometimes publish work. They work with our staff, and we collaboratively publish work together. It's intellectual property, and it's covered in the employee manual. There's a section in the employee manual that states that that about property that's pertaining to the work that you're doing, and that it kind of covers all these areas in terms of what the property that it's public use. It's for public use because it's for the public benefit. So that's kind of like how we were able to address that piece. And so just having an intellectual property template and incorporating that into a supplemental material in the manual, I think that has helped us there.
That's a great example of using a risk management tool to mitigate the risk that somebody will take your organization's intellectual property and either unjustly profit off of it
Right.
or attempt to take credit for it. So that's a great use of different risk management tools.
I would always make sure to, if you do implement it for existing employees, that they sign an acknowledgement that they received it, and that you actually keep on record a copy that you sent it out to them. So that way you're covered in two different areas, because that card, from my experience, emails are admissible in court. So to the extent, wherever, I'm not a lawyer, but, just having gone through that. So that's something there. But my question is kind of just general, and it's related to the current political climate that we're in, and just kind of thinking about how sometimes nonprofits get singled out for just raising awareness of, it could be rights of people, or just benefits that people are entitled to. And so these are things that I'm talking specifically about the practices of just raising awareness of a person's rights, or being an advocate, which many of us are in this space. If there is a type of I'm wondering if there's any type of insurance or any type of document or insurance vehicle that kind of protects nonprofits in the space around, if we're doing what we're doing, what we said that we're doing, but we're being targeted in such a way. I'm wondering if there's any kind of response from the insurance industry in this area.
I think that really, and Rob and Kevin definitely, jump in if you have a different perspective, but really, this again is part of business risk, if you will. But if you are not doing anything illegal, and you're just being targeted because the current administration doesn't like what you do, you have to pursue legal avenues and strategize. And I think this is one of the great things, one of the reasons I'm so proud to be an NPW board member, is that we do provide resources along these lines to the nonprofit organizations who are our members and throughout Westchester and the surrounding area. But, this is not really, you buy insurance against unforeseen, quantifiable, tangible risks. And the change in the political climate, unfortunately, is not really something that you can buy insurance against. There are products that are called political risk insurance, but what they're really for is if you have assets, and up until now, we used to say, not in a developed first world country, but maybe somewhere that's a little more unstable. But I don't know if that still applies. But if for example, if you have a factory and the government changes, maybe there's a coup or something, and all foreign investment is nationalized and they just take it away from you, you can buy insurance that will compensate you for the loss of that asset. But it's not really applicable to just the difficulty of being targeted or losing funding because what you do is not viewed favorably by the administration.
Thank you, Erica. Is there anybody else that has a question? That feel free to get off mute and just share.
And I will say, while maybe people are getting up their courage or gathering their thoughts, it's often hard to come up with a question like right then and there. So again, that's why we're making our presentation available. It's going to include supplemental material, and you'll have our contact information so you can get in touch with any one of the three of us after this presentation if something comes to mind.
Yeah. There's plenty of takeaways in the presentation that we'll be sharing with you after this. that has documents, and thank you to Brown and Brown and Erica for putting that together for us. I think that would be really helpful to bring back to your organizations, to like a checklist of sorts and other documents that would be helpful. Okay, and like Erica said, they have their contact information on the presentation slide. So if you guys have a specific question, feel free to reach out to them. But I think right now, if no one has any more questions, I'm going to close the webinar. Thank you so much, Erica, Kevin, Rob,
Thank you.
for being here. Everyone
Thank
else,
you all.
thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.